Little boy missing 6 years. Found after a Marine's 5-hard shack dog forced. Open a hidden cellar. They said the boy vanished without a trace. But they never asked why a battle-scarred German shepherd refused to leave a $5 shack, until the night he forced open the floor and proved a child's cry can survive 18 months of darkness. Cole Maddox had driven the last 12 miles in silence, the kind of silence that pressed into the ribs and refused to let go. The Ozark Mountains stretched around him like a rough hand closing in, all pine shadows and cold November breath. He killed the engine of his old Ford and listened to the ticking metal fade into the wind. His fingers tightened around the folded auction slip in his pocket. $5. A shack no one wanted, exactly what he needed. He stepped out, boots sinking into soft dirt, and walked toward the warped porch. The boards sagged as if they were exhaling after holding themselves together too long. Cole didn't expect welcome. He didn't expect anything except 4 walls where no one knew his name, and nothing reminded him of the desert heat and the 14 seconds that ended his last deployment. He was halfway up the steps when he saw him. A German shepherd. Male. Big, even under the weight loss. Coat rough, marked by old scars that traced lines across his ribs, like someone had written a story there with knives and time. He stood dead center in front of the cabin door. No collar, no tag, no hesitation. Cole froze. The dog met his eyes straight on. Not a threat, not submission, something different. Something that carried authority, the kind Marines recognized even without a uniform. He didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't take a single step back. Just watched. Cole eased one hand away from his pocket and lowered his pack to the ground, slow and deliberate. Training settled into his bones without him thinking about it. He kept his voice calm, low, level. "I'm not here to take your spot." The shepherd didn't blink. He didn't even flick an ear. He held his line like the doorway belonged to him, and him alone. Cole took another step back, giving the dog space. "You guarding the place or guarding something inside?" Still nothing. The wind shifted, cold enough to bite through his jacket. Cole tried again. "You got a name?" The shepherd remained a statue. Only his eyes moved, following every breath Cole took. Cole studied him. This was not a stray surviving by luck. This was a working dog. A trained one. And trained dogs didn't stand ground for abandoned property unless they believed something inside mattered. Cole's chest tightened in a way he didn't expect. He had seen dogs like this overseas, dogs that kept men alive, dogs that slept with one ear always pointed toward danger, dogs that never forgot their last order. He sat on the edge of the porch, leaving a wide 3-board distance between them. The shepherd didn't react, but he didn't shift away either. For 2 full minutes, neither of them moved. Then it happened. A thin sound drifted through the cabin's cracks, high, fragile, human in a way nothing in the Ozarks should have been. Cole straightened immediately. The shepherd heard it too. His entire body stiffened. Not in fear, not in attack, in recognition, a whimper, not the dog's, from underneath the floor. Cole's pulse sharpened, every sense snapping into clarity the way they had during midnight patrols years ago. He tilted his head, listening again. The sound came once more, softer this time, like something small trying to breathe through dirt. "That's not you, is it?" The shepherd finally moved, one paw shifting half an inch. He didn't leave his post in front of the door. Instead, he angled his head slightly toward the inside of the cabin, like he was telling Cole exactly where to look. Cole rose slowly. The dog didn't block him, didn't challenge him. Instead, he stepped aside just enough for one man to pass, still staying between the doorway and the rest of the world. Permission, conditional, but real. Cole pushed the door open. The hinges groaned, dry and resistant. Dust swirled in the weak light, settling on the old boards like a thin veil. The place smelled of stale air and pine rot, but beneath it was something else. Something alive. He crouched. The floorboards near the far wall were newer than the others. Wrong nails, wrong grain. Someone had replaced them, recently enough that the wood hadn't faded to grey like the rest of the shack. Another whimper. Cole looked back at the shepherd. The dog now stood half in the doorway, watching him with attention that wasn't hostility. It was expectation. "You want me to open it?" The shepherd's tail didn't move, but his breathing changed, quickening just enough to break his stone stillness. Cole crossed the room and laid his hand against the suspect board. Cold air seeped from the cracks. Something down there was drawing breath. He pressed his ear to the floor. A faint scrape answered. Metal against wood. Weak. Slow. Someone's down here. 3 words he hadn't spoken since the desert. The last time he'd said them, the ground had blown apart. The shepherd let out a low sound. Not a growl. Not a warning. A push. Cole swallowed hard. This wasn't an empty $5 shack. It was a door to something buried. He stood, braced himself, and whispered into the stale air. "Who the hell were you guarding all this time?" The shepherd didn't look away, and for the first time, Cole felt the truth forming like a shadow behind the walls. Someone had lived here, someone had been kept here, and the dog never left. Ranger kept his distance at first, holding to the doorway like it was a border drawn in old blood. Cole moved with the patience of someone who had learned long ago that rushing toward the wounded only made them run. He sat on the porch again, far enough away to show respect, close enough to show intent. The dog watched every shift of his hands, every breath. Not distrust, calculation. "You staying?" Cole asked quietly. Ranger didn't answer, but he didn't walk off into the trees either. That was something. Night came early in the Ozarks, sliding down the hills like a tide. Cole lit a single lantern inside the shack, set it on the floor so the light wouldn't blind the dog outside. He kept the door cracked, letting Ranger see what he was doing. Transparency mattered with animals trained for war. He'd learned that in places where shadows could cost lives. Ranger didn't step in, but he stayed close, a silent silhouette leaning against the darkness. Cole rolled out his old sleeping bag in the far corner, the one without the new floorboards. Every time he shifted his weight, the other boards near the wall gave a faint thud, like they were hollow. He caught Ranger's eyes flash toward the noise every single time. "What are you hearing?" Cole whispered. A minute of stillness. Then another. The mountains outside were so quiet he could hear the frost settling on the porch rail. Then came the sound. A tiny metallic tap from beneath the floor. Not nails settling. Not old house creaking. Different. Intentional. Cole sat upright, breath locked. Ranger was already on his feet, head low, ears pinned forward. He moved to that same section of floor, the one he had watched since earlier, and planted his front paws firmly beside it. His body stiffened, muscles bracing as if waiting for an order. "You know what that is, don't you?" Cole murmured. Ranger didn't even flick an ear. His focus stayed glued to the ground. Cole grabbed his flashlight, approached slowly. Ranger didn't lunge, didn't guard the spot from him. In fact, he stepped aside half an inch, just enough to indicate permission. It was the smallest gesture Cole had ever seen from a dog, but it carried the weight of a full sentence. "Do it. Check it." Cole knelt and pressed his palm against the boards. Cold air seeped through the seams. Too cold for an uninsulated shack. Too constant, like a draft from a larger cavity. Another metallic tap reached them. Softer this time. Weak. Cole felt the hair rise along his arms. Someone down there. Ranger made a sound deep in his throat. Not aggression. A warning. A plea. Cole lowered his head until his ear nearly touched the boards. He held his breath. At first, only silence. Then a faint scrape, like small fingers dragging across wood. That was all it took. Ranger spun suddenly toward the doorway, chest expanding, ears locked on the trees outside. His entire body shifted from alert to on alert. The invisible line dogs crossed when their instincts ignited, and the world narrowed to threat versus safety. "What now?" Cole whispered. Ranger growled low, the kind of growl built for warning, not fear. He stepped forward and blocked the doorway with the full weight of his body, staring into the darkness like something was there, inches past where human senses could reach. Cole killed the lantern with one quick flick. Darkness swallowed the room, leaving only the moon glow slipping through the cracks. Outside, the forest exhaled. A heavy branch shifted, not under wind, under weight. Cole moved to Ranger's side, eyes straining against the night. A figure passed between two pines, brief and shadowed. Too fast to identify, too slow to be an animal. Then the footsteps faded. One set, retreating carefully. Cole felt the air drop colder. Someone was here earlier, someone who didn't expect the shack to have company. Ranger stayed rigid until the forest settled again. Only then did he lower his head and return to the floor, planting himself exactly over the spot where the tapping had come from. "You're not guarding this place," Cole said. "You're guarding whoever is down there." Ranger didn't look at him. His eyes stayed fixed on the boards like he expected them to speak again. His breathing steadied, but his posture didn't soften. Whatever was under the floor, whatever he'd been protecting long before Cole arrived, mattered more to him than food, water, or sleep. Cole crouched beside him again. "You don't belong to anyone, do you?" Still no reaction. But Cole knew the truth forming now in the dark. Ranger wasn't waiting for an owner. He wasn't abandoned. He wasn't lost. He was stationed, planted, left behind on purpose, and whatever mission he had been given, whatever command he had held on to all these years, it wasn't over. Cole sat down slowly, shoulder brushing the dog's flank. Ranger didn't move away this time. A silent agreement passed between them, heavy and unspoken. If someone was alive beneath the shack, it meant someone had locked them there. And if Ranger had stayed, if he had chosen this place as his post, then Cole hadn't just walked into a forgotten property. He had stepped straight into a secret that someone had tried very hard to bury. Cole rested a hand lightly on Ranger's neck, feeling the tension coiled beneath his fur. "Show me," he whispered. "When you're ready." Ranger didn't move, but his tail shifted once against the floor. It was all the answer Cole needed. Morning came with a thin veil of fog pressed low across the trees, the kind that made the world feel half erased. Cole woke stiff from the floor, but more alert than he had in months. Ranger was already standing guard by the cracked wall, nose angled toward the boards as if listening for a heartbeat. Cole knelt beside the spot again, running his fingers along the seams. The wood was newer, smoother, the grain tight. Someone had replaced these boards less than a year ago. The rest of the cabin looked like it was one hard wind away from collapsing. But this square of flooring was solid, intentional. "Who patched you up?" Cole whispered. Ranger glanced at him, then back at the ground, as if confirming the question mattered more than the answer. Cole stood and stepped outside. Frost clung to the porch rail, glittering in a thin line as the sun climbed, behind the ridge. He scanned the clearing. Something about the way last night's footsteps faded bothered him. Whoever watched them didn't come close. They stayed at the fringe, cautious, familiar with the terrain. Ranger led the way off the porch, nose low, paws silent on the leaf litter. He stopped near the tree line, then looked back at Cole. "Follow." The trail behind the shack was narrow and ragged, the kind of path made by boots rather than deer. Cole crouched near a patch of soft dirt. The ground had been disturbed, not recently, but often. A looped route. A patrol route. Someone had circled this shack for a long time. As he pushed deeper into the woods, something glinted under a tangle of roots. A wire. Thick. Industrial. The end frayed like it had been ripped from something. He pulled it free, dirt falling away in clumps. Ranger tensed, ears pinned forward. Cole turned the wire in his hand. Not fencing, not scrap. A restraint cable. You've seen one of these before, haven't you, boy? Ranger lowered his head, nose moving over the soil. He followed the scent to a rough patch of earth, where the leaves had been brushed aside. Cole brushed a thin layer away and found the half-burned remains of a map. The ashes still smelled faintly of melted plastic, the kind used for laminated survey charts. Someone tried to destroy this. He lifted it carefully, but the ash fell apart between his fingers. Only a corner remained intact, showing the outline of a ridge and a faint red circle drawn by hand. Nothing else. Then Ranger froze. He wasn't looking at the map. He was staring at a nearby oak, tail stiff, nostrils flaring. In one sudden motion, he pawed at the base of the tree, sending dirt flying. Cole dropped the burned scrap and moved toward him. Ranger dug faster, claws hitting something softer, a strip of fabric. Blue, then plastic beads, cracked and dulled by time. Cole reached into the hole and pulled out the small bracelet, still moist from the soil, the letters faded but readable. Eli. Cole's breath stalled. He'd seen those letters before, at the gas station on the highway, pinned to a sun-bleached corkboard. A missing child flyer that hadn't been updated in years. A boy smiling with a missing front tooth, wearing the exact bracelet Cole held now. Eli Carter, missing 18 months, presumed dead. Cole looked down at the bracelet, then at the ground Ranger had dug up. The soil was freshly disturbed beneath the surface, as if someone had buried it in a hurry not long ago. Not 6 years, months, maybe weeks. Why would someone bring his bracelet here? Ranger suddenly stiffened, muscles tightening under his coat. His tail lowered, his ears locked into a straight line. He released a low, vibrating sound that didn't rise into a growl, but sank into the earth like a warning carried through bone. Cole felt the shift immediately. They were not alone. He slowly rose, eyes tracing the tree line. The forest was still, unnaturally so, the way it had been the night before. Then a twig snapped, soft but deliberate. Ranger turned toward the sound with precision, his body pivoting like a trained canine reading a threat vector. His lip lifted slightly, revealing a flash of white teeth before he shut his mouth again and focused. Cole whispered, "Who's out there?" A silhouette moved between the trees, too far to identify, but close enough to know they were watching. Not a lost hiker, not a hunter. Someone who knew exactly where to stand so the sun cast them into shadow. The figure didn't retreat this time. They lingered, just out of reach. Cole took one step forward. The figure vanished. No rustle, no misstep. Just gone. Ranger sprinted to the edge of the trees, then stopped abruptly, nose high, reading the air. He didn't chase. He didn't need to. His instincts told him everything. Whoever was watching them knew the woods better than either of them. Cole looked down at the bracelet again. The beads, once bright, were dull with grime and fear. An object buried to be forgotten. But someone had dug it up, or left it as a message. Ranger pressed against Cole's leg, not seeking comfort but giving direction, nudging him back toward the cabin. His eyes said enough. "We need to be careful." Cole slipped the bracelet into his pocket and scanned the ridge one last time. The trees whispered quietly, but the silence felt heavier than before, as if the forest itself held its breath. Someone had been here last night. Someone had watched the cabin. Someone knew what lay beneath the floorboards, and Ranger, the scarred shepherd who refused to leave, wasn't just guarding a stranger's property. He was guarding the truth, and the truth was waking up. Cole didn't sleep the next night. Not from fear, not from the cold, but because the burned scrap of map and the children's bracelet kept turning in his mind like gears finding their teeth. By dawn, he had already packed a canteen, a knife, and the flashlight he trusted more than most people. Ranger stood at the door, waiting without command, gaze fixed on the tree line as though he already knew where they were going. Cole held up the map fragment. The red circle, though half burned away, still marked a recognizable ridge. Hale Ridge territory. Surveyed years ago, then abruptly abandoned. Locals had whispered about land disputes and shady mineral claims, but nothing concrete. Still, the way Ranger reacted told Cole the answer wasn't going to be geological. He followed the ridge trail for nearly an hour, Ranger moving ahead, nose sweeping the ground in a meticulous pattern. The air grew sharper, the trees thinner. As Cole climbed the last rise, he spotted old metal stakes planted in the dirt, rusted but unmistakable. At their center was a weather-beaten sign half knocked over. Hale Ridge Resources Private Survey No Trespassing. Cole crouched beside it and brushed away the pine needles. The metal underneath was clean in one spot, like someone had recently touched it, maybe grabbed it, maybe leaned against it while watching the cabin. Ranger let out a low rumble. Not warning. Detection. He dug at a patch of dirt near the sign. Cole knelt and cleared the soil. Beneath the surface, small wooden splinters, a metal clasp, and a strip of duct tape stained with something dark. Old, but not ancient. Ranger's nose pressed deeper into the earth, tracing invisible lines. Cole felt the shift in the air. This wasn't random. Someone had used this location. Someone who didn't want the cabin disturbed. Someone who had been watching. He pocketed the tape and rose. That was when he heard footsteps approaching from behind him. Heavy, confident. Not sneaking, but not friendly either. Cole turned slowly. A man stepped through the brush. Mid-30s, too clean to be living rough, too tense to be out for a walk. His boots matched the tread Cole had seen near the shack. A backpack hung off one shoulder, but it was the patch sewn onto his jacket that stopped Cole cold. Hale Ridge. "You're Maddox, right?" the man said. Cole didn't answer. Ranger moved in front of him, body steady, tail stiff, eyes locked. The man raised a hand as if to signal peace, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Name's Travis. I heard someone bought the old county shack. Didn't expect a Marine." Cole studied him. "You work for Hale Ridge." "Used to," Travis corrected. His voice tightened. "Sometimes you keep a patch on so people know where not to point their questions." Cole didn't let his guard drop. "What do you want?" Travis gestured toward the shack's direction. "To tell you something simple. That place wasn't listed by mistake. It wasn't supposed to go to auction, and it damn sure wasn't supposed to be opened up by some stranger rolling through the mountains." Cole stepped closer, not aggressive but firm. "I paid $5 for it. Legally." Travis snorted. $5 doesn't buy silence anymore. Ranger growled. Low, controlled. Travis's eyes flicked down, and for a heartbeat something crossed his face that looked a lot like fear. Travis lowered his voice. "You don't want to be on that land. Nobody is supposed to be up there." The shack was sealed for a reason. Cole felt his pulse tighten. Sealed to keep someone out or sealed to keep someone in? Travis's jaw clenched. "Doesn't matter now. You opened it, and when word gets around, you'll wish you hadn't." His eyes darted around the woods, especially with that dog digging up things he shouldn't. Cole took a long breath and spoke evenly. What happened to Eli Carter? Travis froze. His expression slipped, the confident mask cracking just enough to reveal something raw underneath. He recovered quickly, but not fast enough to fool Ranger. The shepherd stepped forward, reading the man's heartbeat in the shifting scent of fear. "I don't know anything about that," Travis said too quickly. Cole stared him down. "You hesitated." Travis's nostrils flared. "I'm telling you to walk away, Maddox. That place is trouble. If you know what's good for you, you'll burn whatever you found and forget it." Ranger pressed closer to Cole's leg, signaling danger. Cole took a step back, not from Travis, but to give Ranger space if things went bad. Travis exhaled sharply and turned away. "One last warning, Maddox. Some holes are meant to stay buried." He disappeared into the trees without a backward glance. Ranger didn't move until the woods returned to stillness. When he finally did, it was with purpose. He pushed his nose against the soil again, tracing something beneath the earth like a trail no human could see. He followed it 10 paces, then 20, then stopped abruptly at a mound of disturbed dirt covered by leaves. Cole knelt, pulled the leaves aside. A post hole, fresh, and beside it, buried halfway in mud, a metal stake with a number etched into it. Site 12. Ranger pawed again, this time harder. With each scrape came another disturbing truth. There were more holes, more sites, a pattern. Cole stood and scanned the ridge. Suddenly the entire landscape felt different, as if every tree hid a secret and every patch of earth held a body. Travis hadn't been warning him off. He'd been telling the truth. The cabin wasn't abandoned. It was a cover, a door, a place someone needed to keep quiet. Ranger let out one sharp sound, not loud, but certain. Cole knew from the tone. Someone had been held here, and the people who did it were still close enough to watch. The storm hit just after midnight, wind scraping against the cabin like something trying to get in. Cole had been drifting in and out of sleep, boots still on, flashlight within reach. Ranger lay near the patched section of floor, unmoving except for an ear twitch every few minutes. Then he jolted upright. No sound had triggered him, no footsteps, no branch snapping. It was something deeper, instinct. Ranger's entire body went rigid, tail rising, eyes locked on the floorboards. "Ranger, what do you hear?" The shepherd didn't answer with a sound. He launched himself at the boards, claws raking across the wood with frantic precision. He wasn't trying to destroy the cabin. He was digging like a dog drowning in urgency. Cole grabbed the flashlight and dropped to his knees. Ranger's paws hammered the floor, each strike landing on the same spot. "Stop. Stop. Let me." Ranger backed away only enough for Cole to take his place. Cole pressed his ear to the board. Nothing at first. Then the faintest exhale. Thin, shallow, the kind a starving child makes when their body forgets how to breathe. Cold air seeped through the cracks, brushing against Cole's cheek. That's not just a draft. He wedged the flathead of his knife under the plank and pulled. The wood resisted, groaning. Ranger snarled at it, not at danger but at delay. Cole pried harder. The nail shrieked as it tore free, then the board popped loose. A blast of cold, damp air rushed up, carrying the stench of mildew, earth, and something human. Cole lifted the lantern and leaned over the opening. A narrow staircase descended into a black throat carved out of the ground. The walls were lined with dirt reinforced by old timber beams. Someone had built this. Someone had used it. Ranger didn't wait. He jumped down the first step, barked once, sharp and urgent, then stared back at Cole. "Come on." Cole followed, one hand on the wall, the other gripping the flashlight. The deeper they went, the colder it became. A drip of water echoed somewhere in the dark. The sound was too steady to be natural. At the bottom step, Cole swung the light forward. His throat closed. A boy, no older than 13, curled against the far wall, skin dirt-streaked, ribs showing like lines drawn in chalk, hair long and matted across his forehead. His wrists were bruised where restraints had once been. His eyes, frightened and sunken, reflected the beam of light. But when Ranger stepped forward, the boy's expression changed. Recognition flickered. Relief followed. His lips parted, not in fear, but something close to hope. Ranger approached slowly, lowering his head, tail still, ears soft. He nudged the boy's hand. The boy lifted trembling fingers and touched the shepherd's face like he was touching a memory he thought he'd lost. Eli. Cole whispered. The boy flinched at the sound of his name, but didn't look away from Ranger. Eli Carter, alive. 18 months missing, 18 months underground. Cole knelt in front of him. Hey, buddy. I'm here to help. You're safe now. The boy shook his head weakly. No. He choked the word out, voice barely there. They come back. They always come back. Cole swallowed the anger rising in his throat. Who, Eli? Eli's eyes darted upward, toward the ceiling as if he could see through the floor. The men. The ones with drills. They said I had to stay here so no one else would find the cave. The cave. The mine. The rare earth deposits Hale Ridge wanted so badly. They had hidden him because he saw something. Because he knew something. Ranger rested his body against the boy, offering warmth. Eli leaned into him instinctively, burying his face in the shepherd's neck. Cole steadied his breath. He needed to make a choice now. Call the sheriff and risk Hale Ridge intercepting the radio, or get Eli out quietly and look for enough evidence to bury Hale Ridge before they buried all of them. A scrape echoed above them. Soft. Barely there. Someone was outside. Cole froze. Ranger didn't growl. He lifted his head, listening, every muscle tightened. Ready. Cole switched off the flashlight. Darkness swallowed them, but Ranger didn't need light. He moved in front of Eli, guarding him with his body, silent as stone. Bootsteps crossed the porch. 1, 2, then stopped directly over the loose floorboard. Cole held his breath. The intruder didn't open the hatch, didn't speak. After a tense moment, the weight shifted and the steps retreated. Leaves rustled. Silence returned. Eli started trembling. Cole touched his shoulder. Hey, look at me. You're getting out of here tonight. Ranger pressed against Cole's side, waiting. Cole lifted Eli into his arms. The boy weighed almost nothing. Years of neglect had hollowed him out until he felt like carrying a handful of bones and fear. Ranger led the way up the stairs, pausing at every creak like he was calculating each risk. When they reached the opening, Cole lifted Eli through, then climbed out behind him. The cabin was empty, but the door hung slightly open. Someone had been inside. Cole whispered to Ranger, "We need to move." Ranger ran ahead, nose to the ground, tracing the safest path through the trees. Cole followed, carrying Eli close, protecting him from the night cold. Behind them, the cabin stood with its open wound in the floor, breathing out secrets it had held far too long. They reached the tree line before Cole stopped. His breath fogged the air. Eli clung to him, exhausted. Ranger circled them, checking every shadow. Cole knew the crossroads he faced. If he called the sheriff now, Hale Ridge would hear it. They had eyes everywhere. They would come back to erase the witness. And Eli wouldn't survive a chase. If he ran with Eli into the woods, they had a chance. Small, dangerous, but real. Evidence could wait. The boy could not. Cole tightened his grip on Eli. Saving him comes first, everything else later. Ranger's tail flicked once, as if he understood the decision without hearing it. Cole took one last look at the shack, the place that held a nightmare and a miracle. Then he turned towards the mountain trail and whispered to Ranger, "Lead us out. Keep him breathing." Ranger sprinted ahead, and Cole followed into the dark, carrying the boy who wasn't supposed to be alive. The first gunshot wasn't loud, suppressed, a soft thump that blended with the wind. Cole knew the sound before he even turned. Hale Ridge had discovered the open hatch. Ranger felt it first. His head snapped toward the direction of the shack, ears cutting the darkness like blades. He released a low, rolling growl that seemed to rise from the ground itself. "They're here." Cole tightened his grip around Eli, pulling the boy against his chest. Eli's breathing was shallow, warm against Cole's collarbone. Ranger pushed ahead on the narrow ridge trail, nose low, movements sharp, guiding them along a path only someone who had lived those woods would know. Behind them, voices cut through the trees. Short commands, calculated steps. They were tracking them. Ranger darted forward, weaving between thorn bushes and fallen logs. Cole followed as fast as he could with Eli in his arms, boots sliding over wet moss. Moonlight threaded through the canopy in thin silver lines, barely enough to see by. A second thump. Closer. Cole whispered, "Ranger, find us cover." The shepherd didn't look back. He pushed through a cluster of pines and stopped at a narrow rock shelf that sloped downward. A hidden path, one that no hiker or hunter would ever notice. Cole moved fast, feet striking loose gravel. Then it happened. His boot landed on a slick patch. The earth vanished from under him. He fell hard, sliding toward a deep ravine. Eli's scream cracked the night air. Cole twisted his body to shield him, but the fall dragged them both toward the edge. Ranger lunged. He caught Cole's jacket collar in his jaws, muscles locking like steel cables. His paws dug into the dirt, back legs braced against a root. He pulled with everything he had. Cole felt the strain ripple through the dog's entire body. Hold on, boy." Ranger growled through clenched teeth, dragging Cole back inch by inch. The ravine yawned below, black and bottomless. One more slip, and they'd all be gone. With a final heave, Ranger yanked them onto solid ground. Cole collapsed, holding Eli tight. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Ranger stood over them, panting, tail stiff, eyes locked on Cole as if checking that he was still alive. "You saved us." Again. Ranger nudged Cole's shoulder once, then immediately turned back toward the trail. No time for gratitude. The men were getting closer. Cole forced himself to his feet and followed the dog deeper into the woods. Eli clung to him, tiny fingers gripping his jacket like he knew that letting go meant death. They reached a clearing lit faintly by moonlight. Ranger paused, nose lifting, testing the air. Something about his posture changed. Not danger, something else. Recognition. A faint flicker of light appeared through the trees. Not a flashlight. A lantern. And then a shadow stepped into view. Travis. He held one hand up, showing he carried no weapon. His face was tight, jaw clenched. He looked like a man wrestling with his own conscience. Cole stopped. Ranger didn't. He moved between Cole and Travis, ready to strike if the man took one wrong step. "Easy," Travis whispered. "I'm not here to hurt you." "You followed us," Cole said. Travis winced. "You opened something you shouldn't have. Do you think they were just going to let that go?" Cole shifted Eli's weight in his arms. The boy watched Travis with wide eyes, recognizing him. Ranger caught the reaction and bristled. Travis stepped back, palms open. "That's why I'm here. I can't fix what they did, but I can help you stop it." He reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out a tarnished metal key. He tossed it gently so it landed near Cole's feet. "That opens the map room in the old survey office down the mountain. Everything you need is in there. Drilling data, hidden tunnels, logs of every time they went back to check on him." Travis looked at Eli, and for the first time, shame crept into his voice. "I didn't sign up for this. I thought we were protecting resources, not taking kids. I swear to you, I didn't know until it was too late." Ranger stepped closer, reading Travis's scent, searching for truth. Cole trusted the dog's judgment more than any man's, and Ranger didn't growl. Travis swallowed hard. "They're hunting you right now. If they find you first, it's over. But if you get to that map room before dawn, you'll have enough proof to put Victor Hale in a cage for the rest of his life." Cole studied him. "Why help us now?" Travis looked away. "Because I couldn't live with it. Not anymore." Ranger's tail flicked once, a signal. Travis was telling the truth. Then the forest behind them erupted in shouted commands. Flashlights cut through the trees, synchronized movements. Hale Ridge's men were only seconds away. Travis stepped back into the shadows. "I'll stall them. You run." Cole hesitated. "You'll get yourself killed." Travis gave a thin, tired smile. "Maybe I deserve that. Just get the kid out." He disappeared into the dark without waiting for thanks. Ranger nudged Cole, urging him to move. The shepherd shot forward, guiding them toward an old hunting path that curved away from the clearing. Cole followed, lungs burning, Eli clinging to him. The shouts behind them grew louder. Shots followed, suppressed thumps slicing the air. Something hissed past Cole's ear. Ranger didn't look back. He drove forward through brush and twisted roots, carving a trail through the night with desperate purpose. When they finally reached the ridge crest, the forest fell quiet again. No men, no lights, only the faint glow of the moon washing over them. Cole stopped, chest heaving. He looked at Ranger, at Eli, at the darkness swallowing the woods behind them. "We're getting you out," Cole whispered to the boy. "I promise." Ranger lifted his head to the wind. Then he moved again, and Cole followed, deeper into the mountains, carrying a boy the world had already mourned, guided by a dog who refused to let him die twice. The rescue team arrived at dawn, lights flashing through the fog like distant stars. Cole emerged from the tree line carrying Eli wrapped in his jacket, Ranger pacing at his side, refusing to let a single medic near until Cole nodded permission. A paramedic reached for the boy. "We've got you, buddy. You're safe now." But Eli wouldn't let go of Ranger. His small fist stayed tangled in the shepherd's fur until the medic gently told him they needed to check his breathing. Ranger leaned forward, nudged Eli's forehead once, reassuring him the way only he could. The boy finally allowed the medics to lift him onto the stretcher. Cole walked beside them all the way to the ambulance, watching until the doors closed. Ranger planted himself in front of the headlights, tail still, chest lifted, as if he were memorizing the sound of the engine that carried the boy he'd rescued. When the ambulance pulled away, Cole exhaled for the first time in hours. Now came the hard part. He and Ranger drove straight to the regional FBI office in Springfield, the evidence box Travis had directed him to, wedged between them on the truck seat. It felt heavier than steel, heavier than guilt. Ranger's eyes kept flicking to it, as if he understood exactly what was inside. Agent Mara Collins met them at the entrance. Mid-30s, sharp jawline, sharp eyes, not the type of agent who wasted words or patience. She took one look at Ranger, then at Cole, then at the mud-caked evidence box he was holding. "I hope that's what I think it is," she said. Cole handed it to her. "It's everything. Dig sites, surveillance logs, captivity footage, movement schedules. And you'll want to hear what the kid remembers." Collins motioned them inside fast, not bothering with small talk. Once in the evidence room, she snapped gloves on and carefully opened the box. The moment she lifted the first notebook, her expression changed. Her shoulders squared. Her breath tightened. "These aren't just illegal. These are deliberate cover-ups. There are signatures on these logs from Victor Hale himself." She glanced up. "Do you realize what this means?" Cole nodded. Ranger stood beside him like a shadow, carved from bone and loyalty. They weren't leaving until this was over. Collins kept flipping pages. Each entry was worse than the one before. acoustic readings showing an underground cavern, illegal drilling claims disguised as soil testing. And then the worst, notations about the boy, coded references, timestamps of when they checked the hatch, when they moved food, when they reinforced the walls so no one could hear him. Collins's jaw clenched. She slammed the notebook shut. "I'm calling in the National Task Force. This stops today." Ranger let out a quiet breath, like he'd been waiting years for someone to say those words. By noon, the FBI building buzzed like a hive. Maps spread across tables, digital files mirrored on screens. A forensics tech played the recovered video from the hidden cellar, a shaky clip that showed Eli, younger, terrified, begging for someone named Trent to come back. Collins swore under her breath. They kept him alive as leverage. If the public knew about that cave, Hale Ridge would be finished. "They will be finished," Cole said. Ranger stood by his knee, steady as stone. 2 hours later, the FBI intercepted Victor Hale at the regional airport. He was boarding a charter jet with 3 suitcases, a forged passport, and a phone wiped 10 minutes earlier. Agents swarmed him at the steps before he could take one more breath of free air. The news hit every major station by nightfall. Corporate executive arrested, linked to 6-year child disappearance illegal mining network, uncovered in Ozark Highlands FBI releases statement. Evidence provided by civilian and service dog led to breakthrough. Cole watched the broadcast from a quiet conference room. Ranger lay at his feet, chin resting on his paws. Every time the announcer mentioned the rescued boy, Ranger's ears lifted. A few minutes later, Collins stepped inside with a stack of forms. "2 things you should know," she said. "First, Travis Hale Ridges, survey contractor. He walked into a federal office an hour ago and confessed. Signed a full statement. He says your dog saved his conscience." Cole didn't smile, but something eased in his chest. "Second," Collins continued, glancing at Ranger, local law enforcement and the Bureau both filed an official addendum. Ranger is to be recognized as a rescue asset in the report. Cole looked down at the shepherd. "He's not exactly certified anymore." Collins shrugged. "Doesn't matter. He found the cellar. He saved the kid. He saved you. That's enough. The paperwork catches up to the truth." Ranger lifted his head, amber eyes meeting Cole's as if daring him to deny it. Cole rested a hand on the dog's neck. "You earned it, buddy." Ranger leaned into the touch, just for a moment, before sitting tall again. That evening, Collins drove Cole and Ranger to the children's hospital where Eli had been stabilized. The boy was weak, hooked to IVs, wrapped in warm blankets. But when he saw Ranger enter the room, Eli's eyes brightened in a way no medication could have done. Ranger padded over quietly, lowering his head to the bed. Eli reached for him with trembling fingers and whispered something too soft for Cole to hear. Collins touched Cole's shoulder. "He remembers the dog," she said. "Trauma fogs the details, but not Ranger." He said, "The brave one with the eyes watched over him when the world didn't." Cole swallowed hard. Ranger didn't move, didn't bark, didn't demand anything. He simply stayed there, steady and warm, a promise that the darkness was over. Healing could begin now. Justice had started, and the boy who had been lost for 6 years was finally surrounded by people who would never let him disappear again. All because a battle-scarred shepherd refused to stop guarding the truth. A year passed the way seasons roll over the Ozarks, slow, steady, and without asking permission. The ridge had healed enough that new grass pushed through the ash. The birds came back first, then the foxes, then the rest of the forest that had once held its breath. Eli Carter went home to a family who had lived in the shadow of an empty bedroom for nearly 2 years. The reunion made national news for 3 days straight, but after the cameras left, the real work began. Therapists, sleep specialists, trauma counselors. Every step was small, but they were steps. When reporters asked his mother how he was doing, she answered the same every time. Getting better, because he's not alone anymore. Cole visited once at the family's request, but he didn't stay long. Eli hugged Ranger with a grip that made the dog close his eyes, as if remembering something deeper than fear. When Eli whispered thank you into Ranger's neck, Cole had to turn away. Some rescues take a day. Healing takes the rest of a lifetime. After that visit, Cole returned to the ridge, though returned wasn't exactly right. The old shack was gone, burned and buried. In its place stood a new cabin, raised by volunteers. Veterans, local carpenters, firemen, hikers, even strangers who had followed the story from across the state. One man brought a truck full of cedar planks. A woman arrived with a box of new tools and left without giving her name. By the time winter came, the cabin stood straight and proud, with a roof that didn't leak and steps Ranger could climb without slipping. Ranger liked the top step best. He lay there now, breathing slowly, the afternoon sun warming his aging fur. He had more gray around his muzzle than he used to, more stiffness when he rose. But his eyes were the same, steady, reading the world without fear. Cole sat beside him, boots crossed at the ankles, a mug of coffee cooling in his hands. The quiet didn't bother him anymore. It wasn't the silence of a man hiding. It was the silence of someone who had made peace with the things he couldn't undo. Sometimes hikers came by, recognizing him from the news. They always asked the same question. How did you know the boy was there? Cole gave the same answer, every time. I didn't. Ranger did. One cold evening, as the sun dipped behind the tree line, Cole opened his journal. The cover was worn, edges creased from being shoved into too many pockets during too many restless nights. He wrote slowly, letting the words settle the way embers settle after a long fire. I didn't save him. Ranger did. I only followed the dog. Ranger lifted his head at the sound of his name, ears twitching. Cole reached over and ran a hand along his back. The dog leaned into him, as though confirming the truth of the sentence. Later that night, Cole walked the new boundary markers along the ridge. Ranger followed a few paces behind, not because his instincts told him to patrol, but because it was habit, a kind of ritual between two souls who had learned to trust the same ground. The trail was the same one they had used the night they carried Eli through the dark. Cole paused there, breath catching for a moment. The forest was peaceful now. It was hard to imagine it once held secrets buried deep enough that only a dog could hear them. Back at the cabin, Cole settled onto the porch again. Ranger eased down with a slow exhale, placing his head on Cole's boot. You're getting old, Cole murmured. Ranger didn't argue. He simply blinked, patient as always, a soldier retired but not gone. In the distance, a faint glow marked the spot where the old shack had stood. Wildflowers grew there now, a memorial of sorts, planted by the community in memory of the boy they nearly lost, and the dog who refused to let him stay, lost. Cole watched the field until night swallowed the last of the color. Ranger stayed awake longer, ears turning towards the trees, listening to things only he understood. The mountains had changed them both, but the quiet, this new quiet, felt different. It felt earned. Healing didn't need applause. It needed space, time, and those willing to stand guard, long after everyone else had walked away. Ranger shifted closer, resting his weight against Cole's leg. Still watching, huh? Cole whispered. Ranger's tail moved once across the porch. Some dogs bark for noise. Ranger never had. He guarded truth the way other dogs guarded fences. And in that quiet cabin, 1 year after the world stopped burning, it felt enough. The Ozark Ridge looked different now. The scars of the old mining roads were buried under new soil, and the state had officially declared the entire region a protected forest corridor. What used to be a forgotten patch of mountains had become a sanctuary, a living reminder of what truth could survive when someone refused to let it disappear. Cole didn't take a formal job, though offers came from every direction. Forest Service, local law enforcement, even a trauma outreach program for veterans. Instead, he signed on as a volunteer trail steward. No salary, no schedule, just him, the ridge, and the dog who still walked every boundary line as if the woods belonged to him long before any human made a claim. Ranger moved slower these days, shoulders a little stiff, but his awareness was unchanged. Birds, hikers, shifting wind, distant footfalls. Nothing passed without him noting it. He was older, but not diminished. If anything, the age added a kind of gravity, the quiet authority of someone who had earned his place through scars and instinct. Local schools had begun field trips into the new sanctuary. Kids scribbled notes about tree rings and watershed restoration without knowing the land had once hidden a secret cellar beneath its roots. And they didn't need to know. Not all truths were meant to be retold, but they always asked about Ranger. The story had traveled farther than Cole expected. People whispered about the German shepherd who dug through a cabin floor and uncovered a missing boy. Some said he had sensed the child's heartbeat. Others swore he had followed a scent no human could understand. That part wasn't myth. Late in October, a class from Westbrook Elementary arrived with clipboards and sunscreen. Cole walked them along the ridgeline, answering questions about wildlife, soil preservation, and the slow healing process after a burn scar. Ranger stayed close, weaving between small legs with an ease that made even the shyest kids reach out to touch him. One boy lingered at the back, pencil tucked behind his ear, eyes fixed on Ranger as if trying to unravel a puzzle. When the group stopped at an overlook, he finally spoke. "Sir, can I ask something?" he said. Cole nodded. "Sure." The boy swallowed, gathering the courage that only comes when a question has been living inside someone too long. "Do you think Ranger knows? That he actually saved somebody? Like a real person?" The wind shifted across the ridge, brushing through the trees the same way it had the night Ranger tore open the rotten floorboards. Cole watched the shepherd settle beside him, tail curled neatly, posture alert but calm, just as he had been the first day they met. Ranger looked up, eyes bright as amber glass, unblinking. "Yeah," Cole said quietly. "He knows. He knew from the moment he broke through that floor." The boy nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of it. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Some truths land softly and stay. Ranger lowered his head and pushed his muzzle against the boy's hand. The child froze, then laughed in a small, startled breath, the sound breaking through the cool autumn air. Cole watched them, feeling something loosen inside his chest. A year ago, Ranger had only trusted the dark and the broken. Now he was leaning into the open hands of a child who'd asked the one question no adult ever dared. Legacy wasn't medals or interviews. It wasn't the news stories or the federal plaques hammered into wooden posts along the trail. Legacy was this, a moment where a child learned courage from a dog who'd carried more truth in silence than most men ever carried in words. As the group moved on, Ranger lingered beside Cole, eyes trained on the tree line. Even now, even with the ridge safe, he didn't let his guard down fully. Cole squatted beside him. "You're still on duty, huh?" Ranger's ear twitched, the closest thing he ever gave to a grin. They walked the trail together, stepping through patches of light and shadow, the forest breathing slow and steady around them. The ridge felt alive now, watching over them the way Ranger always had. And somewhere between the rustle of leaves and the crunch of gravel under their boots, Cole realized something he'd never said aloud. The boy had asked if Ranger knew he saved someone. But the truth was bigger. Ranger hadn't saved just one child. He had saved a mountain, a community, and a Marine who had come here hoping to disappear. The dog kept walking, nose low to the ground, tracking a world only he understood. And Cole followed, the same way he had the day everything began, trusting a set of instincts that had never once failed. The sun was slipping behind the Ozark Ridge, staining the sky with the last light of the day. The air held that quiet warmth before evening settled in, and the new cabin's porch creaked under Cole's boots as he leaned back against the railing. Ranger lay beside him, stretched out long, his breathing slow and steady. The grey around his muzzle caught the dusk like silver threads. A gravel crunch sounded on the trail below. Not the cautious steps of a hiker, more deliberate. Cole straightened slightly. Ranger didn't rise, but one ear lifted, tracking the rhythm of the approach. A young woman appeared at the edge of the clearing, holding a recorder in one hand and a small shoulder bag in the other. She hesitated at the bottom of the porch steps. "Mr. Maddox?" she asked. Cole didn't bother correcting the title. "Yeah, I'm sorry to come unannounced. I'm Laura Pierce with the Ozark Chronicle. We've been documenting local conservation stories. Yours keeps coming up." Cole nodded toward the empty chair. "If you're looking for a hero quote, you're about a year late." She gave a nervous smile. "I'm not looking for a headline. People keep saying your dog saved a kid. And a mountain. And maybe you. I just want to understand what really happened from someone who was there." Ranger stood then, slow but purposeful, and stepped between them with a calm, measured inspection. Not protective, just reading her, the same way he read everything. Laura lowered her hand, letting him sniff, then moved past him when he allowed it. Cole watched the two of them, the same thought crossing his mind that had crossed it 100 times this past year. Ranger chose who to trust, not the other way around. They sat. She tested the recorder, set it between them. "I have only one question left," she said. "It's the one no one seems able to answer." Cole waited. If you hadn't listened to Ranger that night, what would have happened? Cole looked at the ridgeline before answering. The woods were quiet, more alive now than ever. Ranger settled beside his leg, head up, eyes on the treetops like he was still guarding something invisible. Then a little boy would still be crying in the dark. Cole said, "The dog didn't bark for attention. He barked because someone needed to be found." Laura didn't speak for a moment. Even the recorder seemed to fall still. Cole reached down and brushed a hand along Ranger's back. The dog leaned into him, a quiet confirmation. "Ranger didn't lead me," Cole said softly. "I followed him. Big difference." Laura clicked the recorder off, but stayed a moment longer. "People say dogs don't understand purpose," she said. "I think your dog proved that wrong." Cole huffed a breath close to a laugh. Ranger wasn't proving anything. He was just doing what no one else would. The reporter thanked him, shook his hand, scratched Ranger gently behind the ear, and walked back down the trail. Ranger tracked her until she was gone, then returned to Cole's side with the same steady loyalty that had carried them through fire, fear, and silence. The ridge dimmed into dusk. Cole sat quietly, letting the night settle. Ranger eased down, placing his head on Cole's boot the way he had the first week they lived here. Still guarding, still listening, even in peace. "You did good," Cole murmured. Ranger's tail tapped once against the wood. The air cooled. Crickets began their slow hum. A barred owl called somewhere beyond the clearing. Life returning to a place that had once held secrets too heavy for a boy to escape alone. Ranger didn't need medals. He didn't need a plaque. His legacy lived in the boy who slept safely at his own home now, in the ridge that would never be drilled again, and in every breath of quiet that the mountains gave back after years of carrying someone else's darkness. Cole lifted his face to the wind. The story was out there now. People would make whatever, meaning they wanted from it. But for the ones who understood, for the ones who had lived through the long nights with only a dog beside them, the truth was simple. Some guardians wear uniforms, some carry flashlights or maps, and some walk on four paws, silent until the moment someone needs saving. Cole placed a hand on Ranger's back. Still watching, huh? Ranger didn't move. He didn't have to. Cole turned toward the camera of the world outside the ridge, the unseen listeners, the ones who had followed the journey from the burnt cabin to this quiet porch. What's your story with a loyal pet? If Ranger's journey touched you, share it. Keep these stories alive. And don't forget to support German Shepherd. Loyalty like his deserves to be remembered.